All right, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, so let's get going. All right, so today we have the pleasure of having Elisabeth Axelrod join us. She is a Wall Street veteran, many years in this space. She has written a number of different articles on the tech in Wall Street, how it's working, how it's affecting customer service, how are salespeople affected by what's going on with COVID. She's written a couple of articles for us as well as others. And today we have the pleasure of having her join us. Elisabeth, thank you kindly for joining us.
Thank you for having me, David.
So how are you doing today? I know that you went to Hobart William Smith College in upstate New York for school. Tell us a little bit about your past.
Sure. I graduated at Hobart and William Smith Colleges a while ago. And since then, I've been in the financial services industry for 16 years. Of those 16 years, the past 13 years, I have been doing client relationship management, in which I service our existing client relationships, various types of financial institutions in the past, ensure that that they are utilizing the products, educated on the products, having the best client experience that they could have, and also working on projects internally with different colleagues on how to make enhancements and other improvements, which would benefit the clients overall.
Well, leading right into that question, being a customer service expert, I mean, it seems like the past 2 years have been like, who could have ever predicted, what we've been through here? And one of the things that I've talked to you about previously is how that customer service relationship has changed from just 2-3 years ago to now. I mean, it seems like there's so much more that a account executive has to be aware of, as well as a customer service, just to make sure to do status quo, much less upsell and try to do more today. Is that kind of what you've seen?
Definitely, David. The past 2 years almost, we've definitely seen a lot of changes, and it happened quite rapidly at the beginning.
Sure did.
I'm in New York, you're in California. I mean, it happened throughout the country. We went from going into the office or traveling, which is a lot of, what their sales representatives
do, right?
Yeah. To lockdown in our own homes, where we were reliant on the technology that we had, and also added to ensure, a seamless transition for our clients, for our ability to continue our work. And it changed, but we were all, everybody within the country was sort of in the same position. So, everybody was patient about it and was understanding about it, I felt, and really concerns on a personal level as well, which is something, as a relationship manager, I'm always concerned on a personal level for my clients, but even more so making sure that, everything, there were a lot of just certain aspects of either their jobs, whether their offices were shut down and they did not know, or even closed down if we were dealing with commercial banks or something like that. There were decisions made over the past 18, 19 months where things changed from being able to go work at, let's say, a branch, to having to either, connect with end customers online, on the phone, video conference. Then you're talking about bringing in all this other technology to do with documentation, e-signatures, going through a due diligence process on that. So there were a lot of changes, but I think everybody understood the situation. And in addition to that, that was sort of what was going on, with the person to person relationships. Then you had expanding that, what was going on.
How's that changed? Right, because I think about it before, to your point, you were talking about, you're going on a sales call, you meet with people, you shake hands, you go to conferences, you go to trade shows, you go to events. And as a salesperson, right, or a customer service, that's where you get your buzz. That's where you get your energy. That's where you get excited. Oh, wait, we get to go to a show. I get to meet all these new people versus you're on the phone and like, it seems to me like it'd be really hard to keep that energy level up and that excitement, right? Because nobody wants to talk to a sales rep that says, and we have a good special for you today. It doesn't work. You got to be pumped. You got to be excited. But, to your point, I think there's a lot of fear, a lot of apprehension in the marketplace. People didn't know whether or not they're going to be able to keep their jobs, much less how to worry about protecting themselves and their kids and their family from COVID. I mean, one of the marketing guys I spoke to put it this way, is like, yeah, it's a tough time, but when everybody else pulls back on the marketing, the advertising, and the PR, why wouldn't that make it more easy if you are actually marketing and selling? So I think there were some companies that actually took the alternative approach and said, okay, it's a game changer. We're not doing the face-to-face. If we're going to use the electronics, we need to change how we approach these folks, how we upsell and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's actually what I see as one of the major repercussions. Now let's go forward for the next 6 months. Let's just assume that we've got this COVID stuff pretty well wrapped up reasonably by January. How do you see that customer relationship changing and customer service in the fintech space as we go back to a normal? Do you think it's going to go back to less in-person meetings and more of the, the Zoom stuff? What do you think is going to happen in the near future?
I think in the near future, it could be both. I think that people who were maybe not familiar with using some of this technology now are. Mm-hmm. It's kind of become status quo in a way. But people do want to get back out there and connect with people and see people. I don't think that there's a replacement for that. When we all had to do it, we had to do it. But there's nothing like getting out there and meeting with people. So I think they're both here to stay. It's just a matter of, proportion. I think that, there's still a lot of fear that people have about getting out there. It's, we're still in the, things are definitely getting better. People are traveling more, people are attending more conferences. I know that, people felt more comfortable after the vaccine came out to maybe go out to areas and meet with people around them, but maybe not fly. Now people are flying more, but there's still concern out there. We were sort of headed towards that direction where we thought we were going to be in the clear, then Delta hit, and we kind of had to take a step back and pivot into a different direction. So I think that to have the skills of being able to continue on with these relationships and to continue to support the initiatives and the goals of our clients, it's always, there are other ways around it. So it also depends on how, the person you're meeting with feels. You can't necessarily impose yourself if they're not comfortable or if they're not back in the office yet, or whatever it might be. So there are a lot of different
that's the EQ, right? The emotional quotient, the empathy, trying to understand. And, as a salesperson, you're always trying to mirror and understand that person. But I think you're right. There's another level that we probably haven't considered in the past that we do need to be aware of. I mean, if you see somebody sneezing and coughing, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm when COVID's all over, I'll be like, oh, should I stay or should I go now? Like that song. But now if I see somebody coughing, sneezing, I'm like, I completely hear you. And it's like, now is it the fist bump? Is it the elbow? Are you allowed to shake? And the hug thing, forget about it. It's like, I don't know. It's definitely changed. So let me ask you a question now. with your experience, it seems like to me that the banking sector has changed over the last 5 years so much. I mean, you've got cryptocurrency, you got fintech, you've got all these services that are trying to go around the traditional brick and mortar. And you being a technology person, I know your family's very tech heavy from the Wall Street time period. And, before, back in the C++ and the Cobalt and the big mainframes, I know your family comes from that Wall Street space, but how do you see fintech affecting you? I think you were talking about one of the things, whereas before you had like, when you were filling out stuff to work with banks, it was only like a couple pages. And you were saying like today with the fintech, because of all the cybersecurity, the cyber crime, all the, the hackers from those countries we won't mention, what are you seeing now? Has that changed from the 1 or 2 pages, or is it still quick and easy to knock out?
It has definitely changed. I think it is of highest concern when you're in the financial industry. You're dealing with people's privacy information, you're dealing with their money.
Yeah.
You have to be especially diligent about, cyber security, cyber risk. And I think when you're working with other companies, if you're providing a product or a service and you're a vendor to them, what I've seen over the years is that the annual due diligence packages have become larger and larger, more tech focused. What are you doing to protect client information? And the vetting process. I mean, when we started working together, it was all about getting vetted and having IT approve every step of the way. So it's really,
I think it's a two-edged sword. I think where you're going there is like, the tech is an enabler, but it also holds you back, right? So if you have a good tech team that actually can create this amazing software, that's one thing. But the thing that you brought up, what I think is really relevant, is the regulatory issues have not gone away. In fact, they've increased. So just creating a good software package isn't enough. And then number 2, you've got to change your potential customers to understanding that the things have changed and they have to be more due diligent. The other thing I've seen with all the cyber attacks and cybercrime, I mean, I'd be really afraid to have my eggs in one basket with one bank. I'd be like thinking I might have to have like, 2, if I've got millions in my portfolio, I think I want to separate them in 2 or 3 banks. That way, if one gets, hit, hopefully the other 2 would survive. I mean, it sounds a bit draconian, but we both know the best IT structure in the world can be hacked, and the more layers of protection you put on, the less the people want to work with it. I mean, you've worked with CRMs in the past, and the challenge with CRMs is that all that customer data is in there. You definitely do not want anybody to get in there and steal that data. That's why companies like Salesforce having the enterprise security layer is so important versus a lot of these other guys that are, they're startups and maybe they have some great technology and stuff. But if you're working in the financial services space, it's not the front end you're worried about, it's the back end, right? And that's what would make me nervous working with some of these smaller fintechs is, do they actually have the knowledge to protect themselves? Because when even the biggest of the banks are getting cracked, the smaller guys.
US government, you have it all over the place. It's a huge concern, and you kind of don't find out about it as an end customer until, months, years later. And by that time, okay, hopefully you've changed your password by then. But it is sort of a double-edged sword in that respect, because as a relationship manager, the biggest thing that you want to do is instill a sense of trust with your clients. And
so critical today, right? I mean, in the past it was important, but I always thought if you go to a bank, you see a big, cement or brick structure, you feel like there's a sense of confidence. Today, to your point, I don't think people have that same confidence in this stuff. I mean, and then it goes back to something you brought up earlier that I thought was really important, was how does that customer service role change when you're working with millennials, Gen Z, or the over 50, the over 60 crowd? Generally speaking, usually the older, the more money they have and the more concerns they have because they don't understand it. is the younger groups feeling more comfortable with this stuff than the older groups, or is it uniform?
I think that, it's funny. I think there was an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about, financial advisors going after wealthier millennials, and they're not interested. So I think a few things are happening. I think that, when you're younger and you've kind of grown up with, a lot of this technology, you are more confident using it, and you don't have as much at risk. So I do not think that, technology will take over the person-to-person relationships. It might up into a certain point, but we're also headed towards what they're calling, the largest transfer of wealth. And what I see
That's
is
the baby boomers you're talking about, right? The baby boomers passing to the next generation.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
So, there's only so much that, you're either, I think of it like this. I think of if I have a very simple portfolio and I'm getting simple things, I could probably do that on my own and maybe use an app or something like that. I thought about, I compared it to like TurboTax. If I have
Yeah.
just a few things to input, I could do TurboTax. As things get more complex, you want that professional there to sit down with you, talk it through with you. And, one of the struggles is that I know is trying to capture that younger audience. They do like to do a lot of this stuff online
Mm.
and for themselves. But eventually, I think that there are some, I don't want to generalize and say that, all boomers won't use technology, because there are a lot of
Yeah.
boomers
Yeah.
that know a lot about
Absolutely.
technology. But, depending on how complex your finances are, you might seek out that extra level of
Advice.
attention. Also, how busy you are. That's another thing. If you're talking about somebody who's high net worth, who's working all the time, it might just pay to have somebody else deal with it for you. So,
Yeah. Well, and that also comes back to the percentage, right? So if you use Ameriprise or some of the other big financial advisors, generally they're going to charge you a fee, right? And it's 1, 2, 3%, depends on the size of your portfolio, of course. But then you have the younger guys. I can see where they would be like, you know what? I don't really need this guy's help or this gal's help because I actually know it. And that 1 or 2 points that I'm going to give up, that actually can be quite a bit on an annual basis, especially when you're starting out. And then it's also one of those things where I think there's still a lot of fear where the more educated they are, is they're worried that they're going to upsell them stuff that's not right for their portfolio, but will do the cha-ching for them.
mhm.
Versus if they self-select, nobody's taken a slice, and I don't feel that I've been taken advantage of in any way or shape or form. But with some of those companies, it does feel like, I actually, for instance, I actually did a Fidelity 401k, and I let Ameriprise run it, and I actually let them compete against each other. And I told them, this is what I want. And I did the exact same there. And that 2% actually was painful over a while, over 2 or 3 years. Now, obviously that I was making some good selections as well, but I don't know. I think the younger generation is more aware, and I think they don't like talking to old people. I think they want to self-select, self-source when I want it, because that's what I'm used to, right? Before, I think like the over 40s, when you had a problem, what did you do? You use this thing, that thing called the telephone, right? Now it's all cell phones, but it used to be a telephone. Now what do you do? What do you got a problem? You Google it. The first thing you do for most people is they Google it. They don't like talk to Bill or Janie or Elisabeth, we know are really smart. I look it up. So
Right.
I think that actually has changed the customer service relationship. And I think, to your point, I think we need to start reevaluating that. So being that you've got, over a decade of customer service experience, how do you think you can meld the tech with those different perspectives. Because I agree with you, millennials, Gen Z, baby boomers, everybody treats technology a little bit different. They're not uniform or homogeneous across those marketplace, but there's more. I think the older you get, there's less and less comfort, if you will, with technology. And the younger you get, the more it's like ubiquitous and they don't even think twice about it. So that customer service relationship is probably more challenging today than it ever has been before. What do you think?
I think that, they're back in the day. I think
You're not dating
yeah,
ourselves, being that we're still in our early 30s and stuff.
I'm in my 20s. I think that
Sorry, I apologize.
I think that you know, one of the big benefits about you know, having that balance to have the technology, but also to have, the human employee
Mm.
there, is that the simple tasks, the day-to-day things, you could probably, and this is sort of across the board. This can even be applied to a CRM or something like that, can be accomplished by, you know, an automated system or software or something like that, or an app you could do online. It's when you run into a problem that I find people want to talk to another person. They want
Yeah,
that resolved.
I agree.
Um, and one of the things, when you're dealing, as with end customers, as that's one thing. There's usually some sort of helpline or something like that, that they're able to go to, and that's frustrating in in
Oh, isn't
itself.
it? We're talking about that. That's one of the things that drives me absolutely nuts. I'm working in the tech sector, and all these call phone systems and stuff were supposed to make the customer service experience so much better. I posit at the exact opposite. I have gotten far more frustrated with these systems than I was before. When I talk to a human being, you pretty quickly know, is this person going to have the knowledge to actually do something for me, or should I ask for a manager or something like this? When you're self-selecting and you listen to this on the phone, you have no choice. You're trapped into it. And it's not like you have those choices of, that I want to talk to a human being. What they do is they cycle you through 2 or 3 minutes of having to listen to their garbage so that you can figure out, versus in the past, you called somebody, you need to talk to Jane over in accounting, or this person, blah, blah, blah. So I actually get very frustrated with these tech people that think that customer service is better. I think it's the worst it's ever been in America, because they've taken out the human being. For a quick question like, oh, check my balance. Okay, that makes sense, right? Or I want to do a payment. But to your point, if I have a problem, I'm already a little bit edgy and upset, and I want a human being to create that empathy, to create that relationship, to know that somebody is helping me, versus the cold technical stuff where nothing happens that I know of on the background, and all I get is nothing. Right? At least if you can, it's like, oh, hey, well, give me a second. I'm trying to look it up. The information is loading slowly, versus you're not giving me the right information. I think there's a huge difference there.
Yeah, and I think that when you're dealing business to business, it's very important to have, a point person that you can go to help resolve these types of problems. When I was working as a relationship manager, you deal with a lot of those conflict resolution things. You try to make things better. But yeah, I think that there are two paths. There's the person to person, and then there's some technology that you can make enhancements to, that makes, whether it's making things quicker for a client, or mitigating human error. There are certain things, I think both are important,
Yeah.
to have that. But, to your point, small things like, obviously over the past, I don't know, decade or whatever, we've seen, if you're a bank, you got to have your ATMs, your mobile banking. And now you don't even need to have a brick and mortar. You can just look online and open yourself up an account.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it. How many of your transactions on a daily basis are plastic based versus cash based? I posit 10 years ago that more were cash based than plastic based, but I bet you today, for the vast majority of people, it's probably 60 to 70% of the transactions you make, cash never actually enters your hand, right?
And I
Hey,
think
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think for the majority of, the transactions that you make, just as an individual, retail customer, let's say, you don't really need that relationship. Perhaps you do if you have a larger relationship, but if it's just, especially if you're talking about millennials or Gen Z, when they're starting out, it's very easy to use an app. You don't have to interface with anybody. But
and for them, it's no big deal.
It's no big deal. But it's the option to be able to. I think I told you this. Like, I had opened an account and I did it online, and I took a cut on my rate because there were brick and mortar around. I've never gone into one, but the point is, I know if somebody cleared out my account tomorrow,
there's a place you can go, right? So that's like that. That's
go.
what I'm saying. I think that's something that, especially the over 30s, I think the vast majority of people, I'm the same way. If I can't physically see a bank, I really don't feel comfortable having too much money in there. I mean, I know that sounds silly, and I know it's a perception versus reality, but the perception is a real thing that customer service reps have to deal with. Let me ask you another quick question, and this was kind of like a brain fluff that just came up. I wonder if our system should match people to their age group. So if you're a customer service rep, should we try to match people their age groups so they're similar, so that they have more of a understanding of the technical or lack thereof? Do you think that would help customer service reps? Because I talk to my kids, 18 years old, and I'm like, they're like, you just do this app, you do that app. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. I don't want 30 apps. I want one that does it all. No, Dad, you don't understand. But I'm wondering whether maybe that's something that a CRM could help you figure. It's like, this person is in this age group. They prefer to use electronic communication more than talking. They do like to be talked to maybe once a quarter or something like that, because pursuant to you're making so many good points, that customer service relationship has evolved. So should we evolve our marketing and our customer service to have people that match that person's use or lack thereof of technology? This is a question. I don't know. It's like, maybe that would help.
Yeah, it's hard to base it on age. That's the only thing.
Yeah,
I think
it is.
I think it's sort of a know your customer kind of thing, but I've heard everybody is pretty individual about how they like to get contacted. And when you work with somebody long enough, you pick up on that. So, I've had clients where, I would email them and I know I'm getting a phone call. Like, I'm not getting a response to my email, I'm getting a phone call. And it had nothing to do with age. It's just some people, and then there,
and that's where the tech can help, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I think about, especially because, no matter sort of what industry, whether you're in finance or any corporate sort of position, you're using technology in some sort of way. I think it's to the benefit of, not just to have the IT team know how to use the technology, but it benefits in a sales role or an account management role to have some idea of how your technology works, because everything is going to have that component to it. You have the large investment banks, the JP Morgans, Goldman, investing so much of their operating costs into new technology. And even the smaller banks, the largest proportion of, their annual spend will beyond technology, because in order to compete, and you have to have that there. So, it's one thing to know your product, but you're going to get tech questions. And if you put out any sort of application or any online portal or anything like that your clients will be using, you kind of have to have an idea of how that works, or turn it over to somebody within the firm that knows how it works. But it's some of the simpler questions. You kind of have to have that understanding of what are we offering you, and how does it work, and how will it help you. And I've been a part of different enhancements that we've put out based on feedback that we get from different clients. And over the years, a lot of the feedback has more and more to do with, well, wouldn't it be great to speed up this process by having something to go into and just enter it and done. Make things less manual, which is what we always talk about. Automating. Automating. Not everybody, depending on the size of the client or whatever the reasons may be, not everybody might want to do that, but to have the option and then also the ability, it's also an additional thing to add to your sort of toolbox of what you're offering. So here's the main thing, but we also offer this, and this if you're interested, which could make it easier. So it depends on how people are looking to utilize your product or service, and is it making it easier for them? Is it cutting down on the time because people have limited time, or is it making it more difficult for people? So it's a conversation.
So it seems to me like the gist of what you've said is that the customer service representative is more important than ever before, because they have more things that they have to think about in order to create that relationship with the customer. It's getting more complicated, not less complicated. So let me jump into this. I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate the time you've taken with me today. And I guess, hopefully this, I guess one of the things that I see is, I know somebody that with your skill set and stuff, you have the headhunters calling you all the time. So talk to me, for the people that are looking for jobs in the financial service sector, what are the changes you see happening? Because with your knowledge and having those folks call you for new jobs all the time, what is it you see that has changed in the past 2 years that the recruiters and the companies are looking for a fintech specialist like you with your years of customer service experience?
Well, I think there are certain things that have become more standard now that they're looking for. And a lot of that has to do with, knowing the basic functionality of a CRM. Nowadays, being able to use a video conferencing system, things like that. And also picking up on, any internal technology or systems that might be used, at that firm. So
matching your skills with technology with what that company is already using. So you can say, I already know you use Salesforce. I know you use your Oracle or a NetSuite or something like that. Okay. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good point. That would really differentiate you. I like it.
Yeah, I think that you can't ignore the impact that technology has on the industry. That's the direction that it's going. So, to be able to, you can't ignore it and just say, well, I don't work that way. I don't use CRM. I don't use this or that.
I don't want to.
I don't want to.
Or I like my Excel spreadsheets, right?
Oh, God, Excel.
Well, we're being honest here. Let's be honest. There's still a lot of people that's their, they call it a CRM, but it's really a CMS. But yeah, I agree with you.
But when we started working together, what I really appreciated about you and the team at Sentia is, you took a a consultative approach. You spoke to everybody about how they use the different systems. And then, you know, what you were looking to do was to automate a lot of the stuff that was being done manually.
The old tab, right? Yeah. That drives
And
everybody crazy.
and I think that, you know, companies invest in all of this technology, but how much thought is put into how it's going to be used, and how much time is it taking people to use it? So I think that what, you know, you were able to do, and what, you know, if people sat down and thought about, well, what are we using this for? And how do we use it now? And how can we make it better and faster? Because, you know, it's really become, technology is meant to be a tool to help, to enhance the process, and so you can concentrate on the more important things, right? And, you know, people need to be trained. That's a big thing that they're talking about. You know, there all these new technology is moving so quickly that, you know, you can learn something one day, and then a year from now, you know, there's a new update or version that comes out, and you're thinking, what am I doing now? So I think there needs to be consistent, you know, training. I think that if you simplify, if you think about what you need from the technology, and then simplify it, because one of the other things is, you know, for a sales team has pretty high turnover compared to other departments. So if you're turning over, let's say, I think I've seen the statistic of 30% annually, you know, you kind of need to make things intuitive enough that people who are just joining, or, you know, can come in and kind of figure it out. And use it how it's meant to be used. So
keep it simple.
Keep it simple is really, and automate as much as possible, is really, in my opinion, key to, you know, because you're directed to do your job, support the customers, grow the customer relationships, for salespeople, prospect, you know, client acquisition, client retention, all these different things. Plus there's all these other, as we mentioned, all these other things going on, right? You know, the due diligence, but then just being aware of what's going on in the world, in the market, knowing what's going on with your customers, the history, all these different things, and the people, because there's a lot of turnover at client firms as well. So getting to know new people. So I mean, it's constantly evolving. There's a lot going on, and tech, you know, in theory,
enhances that relationship potential.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
All right, Elisabeth. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time today and your insight and your knowledge. If anybody wants to contact you, they can catch you on LinkedIn, Elisabeth Axelrod. You can also see her on Sentia Says. She's a writer for us, talking about Wall Street, fintech, banking, customer service. Is there anything else that they can see you at? I know that you do a lot of different things.
That is all.
Okay.
But thank you.
Not a
Thanks,
problem.
David. I appreciate it. This was fun.
It was fun. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate your insight. And I have a hunch we'll have you back on in a few months.
Great. Talk to you soon.
All right, Elisabeth, thank you kindly. This is Sentia, corp.com if you want to find more information on us, or you can go to sentiacorp.com/Sentia Says for all the blog articles and videos that we've done here. Thank you kindly, Elisabeth. I hope you have a great day, and have a good one.
You too. Thanks, David.